And that was instantly going through my mind when people were saying, "Oh, what does that say? I can't see it from the side." I was like, "Oh,
Mm.
I shouldn't have saved this game." Hi, welcome to the Hobby Hangout for another episode. So, where did we get started?
Um,
A little recap of what we did this week. As a family, obviously we play board games and we've done some dabbling into miniature tabletop games. But we've kind of decided to test a few games that have that low cost. What's the word?
entry cost?
Low entry cost. Yes, low entry cost to kind of figure out where or what game we may potentially invest our time in learning, playing, painting our own armies, and building some specific terrain.
And
Or
also not just the cost, right? It's also the complexity and how
yes,
long the games are, so that our youngest one, who has less tolerance for
yeah,
longer games, and he's also, he tries it one time, and if he doesn't like it, then he's done with it.
exactly.
So right now our daughter is our tester
Yeah,
for now until we find the one that we want to introduce to my son. But yeah,
yeah.
well, what else were you saying about
Yeah,
it?
well, I mean, I think just the intention overall is to get into the hobby a little bit more as a family and just do some painting and gaming together. But obviously, they do require some level of investment, at least from time at the most, if you want
Hmm.
to paint your armies and build terrain. So we just want to test a couple of games out and try and make that decision what'll make the most sense. So this
Yeah.
week you tested out Relic Blade, right?
Yeah, it was interesting. It was like, I don't know if the rules for the demo are the same or close
They're
to,
more complex in the real game.
yeah.
Yeah,
Um, so like I still need to understand how more complex are they
yeah.
compared to the demo. But the demo version was really easy to follow, very straightforward. I think that the cards, like I don't know if the cards for the characters are also gonna be different, but they were like very straightforward. Unlike, the only thing that I can compare it to is Warhammer Fantasy, where you have your own booklet just
Yeah.
for your own army, right? So this one was a lot easier. It played quite fast, I think. We were stopping to look at the rules every now and then,
I
and
mean, for a
even
first time, right? Like taking it as
yeah,
you know nothing of the game and trying to play a game. I think it was still under an hour,
it,
which
yeah,
is
it was
impressive.
still
Yeah.
under an hour. We will have a video for the
Yeah.
playthrough if anyone is interested to see how much we stumbled. But yeah, so that one was interesting. I will definitely play again, just the demo version at least. Then the other thing we have, I don't know if we have ever mentioned that we have been doing some learning by ourselves. One of them was the coding for games, and the other one that I don't think we mentioned is learning more about AI and informing us better than what we thought we knew.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely looking at, I guess the course is primarily focused around like prompt engineering. And we're learning a little bit more about the foundations of large language models. But yeah, it's interesting because when you interact with something like ChatGPT, you kind of assume that it's learning from uh, what's out on the internet sort of thing, right? Like the base data set that it has access to. But through the examples that we were shown, again, it is learning, but it's learning from a statistical probability perspective versus actually understanding what it's speaking to, which is interesting.
Hmm.
um, and the examples of, asking it to pick a random number between two.
I think it was roll a die or something like
Yeah.
that, right? Like roll a die and give me the number, and then it responded something like, "I actually can't do that, but if I were to do it," or something like that, like it would be a four.
Yeah.
And it's only because when you put that sentence, then the most likely answer that comes next is number four. Based on the data that it was trained on, that's the most likely answer. One of the main takeaways for me actually is that once you're speaking in natural language, I think that you forget that you're talking to a machine, right?
Mhm.
And so even in real life, we generally are not very good at communicating what we need.
Yeah.
And so we rely on the other person to use body language to know some of the context, to understand what it is that you want and give you the response that you need. Whereas if you're talking to a machine, it might still be capable of doing that, but you have to be more conscious of providing all of the
Explicit
input,
as well.
explicit,
Yeah.
yeah, of all of the input that it needs to know, that when you're having an actual conversation, the other person will just know to do it, right? And you don't have to provide that because there's
Hmm.
some history, right? Or shared context. So that is one thing that it tricks me, because even though I know some of the foundational stuff, it still makes me feel like I'm talking to
Yeah.
a person.
Yeah.
I even say thank you.
Even the like learning how the order of the information and requests make a difference in terms
Hmm.
of how it will apply with the appropriate information, right?
Hmm.
So just as you said, that's almost taken for granted when you're speaking to a human, I guess,
Hmm. Hmm.
because they can infer that you mean to put it in a certain order,
Yeah.
whereas you have to be explicit when using those types of tools.
And I mean, you have to get better at how you communicate, right?
Yeah.
And be explicit. Um, so maybe we should put the link in there just in case that
Yeah,
anyone is
yeah.
wondering about it, because it's been really, like, I wouldn't say that I'm an expert
No, yeah.
to know if that course is good or not. But I think that what we are learning, like,
It has value.
it has some value, right? And so we're enjoying it. So we'll put it in the description,
Yeah.
just in case that people are interested.
All right, so I guess that brings us to a topic to today.
Yeah,
So our
not even related to it,
not
but
related at all, no, yeah. But our topic today is going to be centered around games, board games, card games, miniature games in some capacity. Um, but the, I guess, growing trend or more and more people, I guess, if that's a trend, well, protecting their games, like in
Mhm,
terms of sleeving cards. I know some people will laminate cardboard portions of it if there's like player boards and things like that. Um, and sort of what may be driving that behavior, or like is there truly a benefit from it? So yeah, I just want to discuss that with you and get your opinions on it.
mhm,
I know I have my opinions, and whether they're right or wrong, it's just based on my own experiences. But I think I wanted to start with sort of maybe the first part of it is games in general. What's really stuck with me, I know we haven't really gotten too far into the book, but what's really stuck with me from the game, from the book that we purchased and talked about last week, was that concept of games are intended to be fun engines. And the more I keep thinking about it, it's been on my mind just constantly, almost every day, just thinking about the idea that games are supposed to be fun engines, and that whole aspect of it being an immersive experience. Um, and just thinking back to like as a kid, games like Monopoly, Scrabble, even and Uno and things like that. Like we didn't protect the games.
mhm,
Now, to be fair, the games probably cost a lot less than what the average board game is today, but like the main purpose of those games was to have fun.
mhm.
And to a degree, like the tactile component is part of that fun and part of that experience. Um, but what was your, I guess, your take, like growing up and having those games? Do you remember them being damaged and being treated roughly?
Well, yes, but it wasn't necessarily because we were rough with them. It was because we used them so
If you
much.
use them, yes, yeah.
Yeah, so I remember our first Uno set. There were some of the cards that seemed to be marked. It's just, like, we got so excited and then we ended up folding one over,
Yeah.
right? Things like that. I think I mentioned in a different episode that I was so excited. I brought them to school. I wanted to share the fun with everyone. And it was so windy. I dropped them, and like the school had like a very open, um, I mean, they had a big land or area where not everything had buildings, and so there was a big part that was just empty. And so it got like it was flying everywhere, and it was just impossible to go and track down all of the
Yeah.
cards. Even then, we continued to play with those ones. It wasn't a complete set. I think we ended up replacing it at some point, but it was like, I think that from a especially when you're playing with kids, right? Like we were kids, and I think that is just the same thing as with everything else, like, you try not to spill things on them. If you have your hands dirty, like, really dirty, you're gonna go wash your hands before you touch them. I think that there's, like, an implicit etiquette
Mhm.
that it just applies to absolutely everything, or it should. Um, but yeah, to the point of, like, sleeving and things like that, I had never seen anything of the like until recently.
Yes, yeah. And even like as you said, so cards definitely get marked or they get bent, and you kind of know what card it is.
Mhm.
But thinking back on it, I don't ever recall it diminishing the fun. If
No.
anything, more than one person know what that card is. And if
Yeah.
it's a good card, you're all trying to get it now,
Yeah.
right? So if anything, it increases the fun. Um, to a degree, I guess. But and yeah, and just thinking back on like Monopoly and like all the house cards, I can't remember what they're referred to as, like
Properties?
the properties, yeah,
Yeah.
like those are always getting bent up because they're just
Oh,
almost
ours
paper,
were
right?
like yeah, it's like a cardboard kind
Yeah,
of thing. I remember there were some of them that were like almost like paper thin
yeah,
because like we used to use them so much. There was, I think, it was very satisfactory to touch a bill that was new though.
yeah.
Like, the biggest ones that I think they were like a 500 bill or something that didn't get used as often. It
Yeah.
was like so nice just to touch it.
But yeah, I think like to me, that's the memories I have of gaming as a child is that tactile experience, having the rough edges, the used components. Always Monopoly, I think everyone loses some of the players at some point, and you end up putting
Yeah.
other pieces in as
Yeah.
as the player pieces, right? Um, but yeah, I think in modern gaming, there's obviously that transition now. Like games are treated more as a collector item, I feel. They obviously do cost a lot more, so they require more of an investment. There's obviously a lot of uh, not that there wasn't effort put into the Monopoly games, but there's a lot of I think a lot of effort in like the artistic design behind board
Mhm.
games nowadays, the components. Um, so I do understand the desire to sort of protect them, right? To sort of keep their value. Um, but I do think that at least for me personally, I know I've sleeved a couple of board games, not a lot of them, a couple of them, but the one thing that struck me as I was sleeving them was um like, was this worth it? Sort of thing. Like that's after the fact, right? Like I find like there's obviously the game itself costed a certain amount, and now I had to pay more just to protect the cards. Um, Typically they don't tend to fit in the box quite as easily anymore because most games aren't designed to
Mhm.
accommodate that. Um, and when they're not designed to accommodate that, then the sleeve itself starts to get like
Mhm.
bent and twisted and kind of defeats the purpose because they don't look as nice anymore. Um, But again, I understand the purpose of them. I guess the area where I've used cards the most has been in collector card games specifically. Like if it's Magic or Lorcana, um, I've definitely sleeved those. Um,
Didn't you get something laminated too? I feel
Laminated?
like your brother laminated something for you.
Yeah, he laminated a roll and write game for us.
Oh, okay. So it was
Um,
just so we could erase it, I guess?
Essentially, yeah, you
Oh,
could just
okay.
reuse it versus having to tear out new pages every time, which I think
Yeah.
makes sense. To me, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Um, Save on paper and not
Mhm.
create as much waste.
So actually, one of the things that I was wondering about this, we're talking about our memories from when we were kids and saying, there wasn't a lot of care going into overprotecting the games. But is it our perspective as kids that wanted to touch them? And now that we're adults, that we have to put our own money into buying those games and knowing how much it costs, is that overprotection more so because we're now coming from a different perspective and we want to make sure that our money didn't go to
Yeah.
waste?
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And just looking at the discussions online, I think that's pretty prevalent. Most people that are in the pro sleeving camp is around, I've invested X number of dollars. I want to protect this game.
Hmm.
Um, I don't want it to get, oil and dirt from people playing the game. Um, And I understand that, um, I guess that perspective of
Mhm.
wanting to protect your investment, I guess. Um, but with you, I guess the one question I wanted to ask you with your financial background, what's your thoughts on board games in general? Because I think it's different for other types of games, but board games in general, um, do you see them as an asset that potentially maintain their value or
Well, as a financial professional, I can't tell you that
yeah.
because I'm not I'm not in the appraisal business.
Yeah.
Appraisal is that the word? I will say that probably it depends on people, right? So if you have a game perhaps that is really good and that is not being produced anymore, then maybe there will be some value, maybe not necessarily recouping everything that you put in, but maybe it will have some value, right? Because there's people that want it.
Yeah.
But if the game is still being mass produced, then why are people going to go for a used game? Especially as what we're saying, right? There's a lot of the visual aspect of it, the tactile aspect, and the only way to make sure that you're getting a full game that is not damaged, that is not missing pieces, is by getting it new. Likely, unless they didn't do their quality control. Um, but yeah, like s- I don't see it gaining any value unless you're like maybe waiting until, having them until you're like 80 years old and, people are suddenly into like retro stuff and maybe you will make some money out of it. Um, but I think that for me and going back to people that are protecting them, one thing is to protect them and still play them. And another thing is to protect them to still have them on the shelf. Like, I think
Yeah.
that's a different thing, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. It's like, coins are made for it's an exchange, right, of goods and services. But there's people that collect coins, there's people that collect stamps. And so I think that it's just what is the purpose? Why are you getting it for?
Mhm.
And like that's gonna be really the answer to it. And depending on that, then it's gonna be the value that you assign to it, I think. Um, and so people that are overprotecting them or keeping them, maybe they never want to get rid of them. Like, or is their purpose to make money out of it? Like, I think that we really have to look at the context. We can't just say, we can't just generalize, I think.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah,
Or
yeah, I think so. Um,
you think so? So
well, I'm just thinking more like, to your point, I think most board games, I would call them sort of like general board games, for the most part, are will depreciate in value. I don't think
Mhm,
they're not something that typically will maintain their value or appreciate, right? But there are obviously exceptions, like you said, the really good game that's out of print over time may increase in value. Certain things like in Kickstarters where there are only offering certain things through exclusives and
mhm,
they're no longer available. I've seen the value in that jump, but it's not always the case. It's sort of hit or miss, I guess, because I think it does depend on how good the game is,
mhm,
and whether or not people want those exclusive things. But for the most part, I just don't see a lot of or the majority of board games as something that will hold their value long term. Um, Whereas I do think that is very different for some of the other types of games. So like card games like Magic and Lorcana, the game itself is based off cards and like the value of those cards are measured universally, right? Across the globe. And there are cards that are worth a lot of money. And that is sort of the whole premise of those card games is that there are going to be rare cards, unique cards, powerful cards that are going to be high value and will hold their value and will increase in value depending on the series and things like that. Um, so to me, it makes sense to protect those cards, um, because that's the purpose of the games. They are
mhm,
collectible card games. Um, and then I think more and more on the miniature tabletop side, a lot of the more modern, I'd call them modern or newer miniature games, leverage cards often rather than big rule books for each army. They've started to trend more towards cards for specific units. Um, and as an example, I'd use Star Wars Shatterpoint. I've actually sleeved every card in that game. Why? I'm not 100% certain why, to be honest.
Just wanted to ride the wave.
I sleeved them just thinking, like, as I play with them, does it really add much value to it? I don't think so. It
Did
makes it
you?
harder to store because everything is so much
Yeah.
bigger now. Sorry, what was your
Did you have the sleeves or did you have to buy them?
Um, I had sleeves to start, but then I obviously ran out of them, and then as I had more, I was like, "Well, I can't have half of these sleeved and half not sleeved." So then I had to buy more. Um, but I feel like something like that, you get into that cycle now where if I buy new units, the units will have cards. I now have to sleeve those cards so that they they're equivalent to the other
Mhm.
cards, right? Um, but yeah, I mean, I don't think it adds, at least from my perspective, it doesn't really add anything to the game itself to sleeve those miniature cards. Um, but at the same time, I do think miniature games being primarily based off of the miniatures themselves and the plastic miniatures, for the most part, maintain their value. Especially like games through like Games Workshop or
Mhm.
things like that, where they very much control their pricing. And that in itself allows the miniatures to maintain their value over time. They don't typically depreciate a lot.
And then with those ones, it's easy to strip the paint, right? And
Yeah,
if you buy them used from someone else.
yeah.
Mhm.
But I guess one of the other points was that I've been thinking more about is, do cards or do plastic sleeves on cards actually protect them?
Yeah, I was actually gonna ask you about that because I've seen some horror stories of people that had their games exposed to the elements, for example, right, without knowing, and they will have like mold and things like that. And then it got me thinking, if you had, say, it's a card game and you had it sleeved, would it have protected them from that, or is it still gonna get ruined?
Yeah, good question. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, if anyone knows, if
Yeah.
anyone has had that happen to them, let us know.
um, but like your general household is not a sterile environment either, right? There's dust, hair, fluff floating around. So when you grab a card and you sleeve it, more often than not, you're actually sleeving that card with some dust.
Is
So
that the biologist in you talking about it?
I guess so. Maybe, but
I don't want to know that. If I
uh,
don't see it when I'm doing it, I'm imagining that it's completely clean.
yes, yeah. Um, but with doing that, especially if you get something that's fine or but still able to like scratch,
Yeah.
like that's trapped in there with their card, and you're essentially damaging the card more forcefully than if it was just loose and it would brush off.
Mhm.
Um, so in that perspective, like the sleeves may not provide that much additional protection. Uh, and like if you spill liquids on cars that are sleeved, like if I had a deck of cards and I spilled liquids, I can pick up that deck of card and very quickly distribute them to dry them off. Sleeved cards are not that easily, especially if the liquid starts to seep into those. You now
Mhm.
have to take everything out, and there's more time of that liquid in contact with the cards than if they were not sleeved. Um, so in my opinion, you're probably running the risk of damaging your cards more if they were sleeved and they got wet than if they were not sleeved and got wet. Obviously, I don't have any science to back that. That's just my
I was gonna say
personal
maybe
opinion.
let's do that. Let's spill some water and then let's test
Yeah,
it out.
we could dust it out. Yeah, um, but yeah, I did read on a couple of examples where like the sleeved cards trap liquid in there, and it's not easy. You can't also it's not easy to dry that sleeve out either. If you pull the card out, there's going to be liquid in that sleeve.
Well, and then if it's wet, like it likely also gets kind of like stuck to the plastic, right?
Yeah,
And it's more friction as you're pulling it out.
yeah. And then I guess just my personal experience, the sleeves cost quite a bit. They're not cheap. I mean, they're not overly expensive, but they're not cheap either. And I know you can get sleeves that are on the cheaper end, that don't cost a lot, but then you're losing out some of the functionality of I guess, the more expensive sleeves, like ones that you would use for Magic or things like that, where they're matte faced and they're made so that they're easy to shuffle. Whereas if you get just a standard plastic sleeve, it's actually harder to shuffle them, in my opinion, because the plastic can stick together,
Mm.
or it's not easy to separate and grab them. Um, Although they are a little bit slippery as well, so it's harder to handle them. Um, but yeah, I guess to me overall, the games that I've carded or that I've sleeved, it hasn't increased the fun, I guess.
Mhm.
And I know sometimes I think maybe some of the games, I think I remember you complaining of like the sleeve poking you because they're
Yeah.
obviously very sharp edges. Um, and it takes away from the positive experience. I know it's not a big thing, but like
Mhm.
just being poked while trying to shuffle cards is not fun.
Well, and then, again, just going back to the tactile experience, the cards are not all of the cards have the same finish, right? And so,
Yeah,
personally, I enjoy touching the cards, and the different finishes. And when you have a sleeve, it's just plastic, right? Like
yeah,
you don't know what the quality of the card is because it's, I think that the quality also kind of like is part of the whole experience of playing the game.
it is. I agree. Um, and sometimes like certain sleeves will have like a colored backing, and
Yeah.
you lose out on seeing that design because there's obviously effort that's put in designing the backs of cards as well.
Mhm.
Um, and sometimes you don't get to see that. And then the glare,
Mm.
I found that to be an issue sometimes. I think when we were playing Flock Together, where there was like the weather cards or the cards that were on the board,
Mhm.
um, for certain people on the table, the light was glaring on it and they couldn't really read what it was, right?
Was that sleeved?
Yeah, that was one of the games that I sleeved.
Uh,
Uh, and that was instantly going through my mind when people were saying, "Oh, what does that say? I can't see it from this side." I was like, "Oh,
mm.
I shouldn't have sleeved this game." That's like the first thing that came into my mind. I was like, "Oh, why did I sleeve these cards?"
Yeah, why did you sleeve it?
Yeah.
Was it an expensive game?
No, but in that case, I had sleeves. I had sleeves, and it was a new game, and I was like, "Oh, I'll sleeve these cards. I have more than enough sleeves to do it." So, I sleeved them, but yeah, it just I I remember that was being the first regret that it almost hit me instantly when someone said that while we were playing,
Mhm.
that they couldn't read it because of the glare.
Are there any other types of overprotection that are not sleeves?
So there is the lamination. I wanna I think my brother may have laminated some actual player boards in certain games. Can't
Mhm.
remember which one specifically. And it wasn't because they were writing on them. They were just like the player boards were similar to like Arcadia Quest, where the player board's like that thin cardboard.
Mhm.
So they wanted to protect that player board, so they had laminated it all.
Mhm.
I think it was my brother that did that.
But okay, so that would be a different use case, right? If you're protecting them because the quality to start off wasn't good enough and you want to make it last, I think that's very fair to do. That's You shouldn't have to do that. The game should be good enough. But again, if you want to make it last, I think that's fine. I'm not saying that it's not fine when you want to do it because you want to protect it for any other reasons, right? Um, but that makes a good point, right? Like sometimes they're just not good
It's true.
enough.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And I know I read some of that was in regards to the cards in games as well. Some games have obviously very thin cards or lower quality cards, and just adding the sleeve helps make them a little thicker, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they have a little more durability to them. But yeah, I think it'll depend on again what you said, like, what you intend to use the game for. At the end of the day, I think the important thing from at least from my opinion is that you're actually playing the games.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, if you want to just collect the games, that's fine. But I think oftentimes we as consumers get wrapped up in I want this, I want this, I want this, and games are being produced like crazy nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
There's always new games coming out. And do you need more? If you do get more, what do you do with them? Do you actually have time to play them? Are you making the time to experience them? Um, versus just collecting dust, right? So I think that's something that just as individuals we need to be more conscious about.
Mm-hmm. I've seen a lot of posts, and this might just be the algorithm picking this particular post for me, where people are like, "Oh, I have been this many years or months into the hobby. Rate my collection."
Yeah.
Um, and so, it makes me wonder. Like again, right? Like I think that we're talking about different uh, type of objective where like, is it that you're aiming to have a collection that you can show off? Or is it that you're trying to have a variety of games that you actually want to play depending on,
Yeah.
the situation who you're inviting? So we can't know, right? Because we don't know the context. We don't know the people that are posting, right? We can't judge without knowing. Well, actually, we can't judge,
Period.
period.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, we can't offer an opinion if we don't know the whole context of it. Um, but yeah, it just gets me thinking, right? Like, just like you said, right? Like, there's a lot of maybe there's like some pressure of trying to be like, oh, look at me, I'm a gamer because I have these many games, right?
Mhm.
And where the value is maybe misplaced in terms of like you're a gamer if you have, a collection rather than you're a gamer because you actually enjoy to play the
Yeah.
games. There's like, for example, some people might not have enough space to store them, and so they might not be able to get a lot of games.
Mhm.
Um, and so there will be people that just like to collect them. So I think that it really depends on what the objective is. But for us, I think it's more about having fun and actually getting to use it.
Yeah.
So that's where our perspective is coming from.
Yeah. Um, and to your point, like, I think the other thing I always think about is sort of someone coming in new into board gaming and starting into it. I think it can be overwhelming when they see so many call outs to protecting your game, right?
Hmm.
I think it's important to keep in mind that's not a necessity. It's a
Yeah.
personal preference on how you want to interact with your games. It's not that one is better than the other. It's I think you shouldn't feel pressured to need to sleeve
Hmm.
anything. It's really how you want to interact with your collection and how you intend to use it,
Hmm.
um, and just act with what makes the most sense to you.
Yeah. And who you play with too, right? And like if it's with people that and like for example, us with our own kids that we know that they're very careful, they're very clean all the time. Our friends, like they also are respectful of, they're clean
Yeah.
people, right? So we're okay with them handling our stuff. But I think that if you were to go to, like an event in the community and you're bringing a game and you don't know if people are going to be respectful of the game the way that you want your game to be respected, I think that's a valid point for perhaps protecting it if it's not something that you're going to be replacing if it gets damaged.
Yeah.
So like times that we have played with other people, like with kids that our kids invite, I have been like just watching them because they have like the water, the glass like really close to it, and I'm like, where I know my kids like they always have the non-spill bottles. So I know that I felt like that apprehension, I guess, in a way. Um, but not to the point of saying, "I'm gonna leave them before they come
Yeah.
and touch it."
One aspect I wanted to touch on, I didn't want to get too much into it, but just sort of like the environmental aspect of it. Now, obviously, board games are are may not always be the most environmental. I mean, they may leverage plastics and oils and things like that. But looking at essentially increasing the footprint of it by getting plastic sleeves to sleeve
Mhm.
everything, right? Um, so do you have any thoughts or opinions on that or?
Yeah, I mean, that's disappointing that there's not a lot of um, environmentally conscious production in terms of board games. I think like I'm not actually sure now, but I'm pretty sure that the one that I got for our daughter, the Race to the Treasure from a long
Yes.
time ago, one of the things that caught my eye was that it was made out of uh, reused, like recycled materials or something like that. And that was one of the things that I was like, oh, that's interesting. I've never seen this before. And then on top of that, the plus was that it was a good game. So then that's why I ended up buying it. But in general, I don't see anything that is environmentally friendly, and I don't know why not. Like,
Yeah, and from what I've read, and I guess it's a argument. Whether or not it's a good argument, I think depends on the person. But I know the one of the main arguments that I see, especially around like miniature wargaming, is it's not a big enough impact in the world. Like there are
mhm,
more important and bigger areas where we can make cost save not cost like environmental impacts by reducing use of plastic and things like that. In other areas will have a larger impact than trying to make plastic miniatures eco-friendly.
mhm,
Um, which is fair. I think that I don't disagree with that comment. Um, but also treating it as a what's the word?
justification.
Not justification, but like saying do this instead of that versus do both,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
um, I think is my opinion that that's a failing in the industry, right?
mhm,
Yes, it's a smaller impact, but it could still be an impact
mhm,
if we shifted that, right? Um, whether it's from collectible card games, plastic miniatures, or cardboard and wood tokens and things like that in board games and plastic components. I think all of those things will make an impact. Whether they're a big impact, I think is debatable, but
mhm,
it's still an impact regardless if you change those items. Um, and I think card sleeves are just an added component to that.
mhm.
That we are adding more plastics. You can't say no, right? It may not be a large impact, but you're still adding plastics by growing that industry of card sleeves because it is growing.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, that's my thoughts on it.
Yeah.
Interesting. One thing that did come across, I think it was over a year ago now, um, by a miniature YouTuber that I watch who's actually a scientist. I believe he's a geologist, maybe. And he does channel every now and then. He doesn't post that often. Um, but one item that he used or he talked about was actually a company called Enviro Games, which is they make a miniature game, and their goal is to try and make it as environmentally friendly as possible.
Mm.
So like all of the character bases are made out of compressed reused MDF wood. The rules are all on paper. There's no color ink used. All the components come in brown recyclable envelopes versus plastic wrapped containers. Um, and then the plastics used for the miniatures are used through as much recycled materials as possible. And they have processes in place to reuse any miscasts and things like that. So I think that's neat. Do they have the most beautiful sculpted miniatures? No, but they're not ugly either. Like they're not bad miniatures.
Well, is that a design improvement, or is it that they're constrained because of the material?
I think there may be some constraints on the materials and probably the process. Because I think to have such fine detail and high resolution on injection moldings, your molds have to be redone over and over. Like you can't reuse the molds over long
Mm,
periods of times because they start to lose their definition. So I think the processes are probably limited. Um, but overall, like they're not hideous miniatures. They're not bad miniatures. They're not top of the line miniatures either.
mhm,
Um, but it's interesting to see that, right? If more and more companies start to look at that, that's where you start to see the improvements and the innovation.
mhm.
Um, but it doesn't happen unless companies choose to do that.
Yeah. You also mentioned, kind of like unrelated, I guess, the company where you can dispose of your
Sprues, yeah, yes,
yeah,
yeah.
sprues.
Sprues.
How do you spell that again?
Sprue.
Okay, that's not a word that I'm ever gonna learn. But yeah, so that was interesting too, right? Like where you're seeing companies that are seeing that there's a problem. And like you said, right, like maybe it's not the biggest problem. And I think the biggest problems are gonna come from industries, like at production levels, mass production levels. But I think that we still have to do whatever we can do.
Mhm,
And so if there's companies that have identified that there's a need for perhaps like disposing safely or reusing specific materials, then I think that's exciting to see, and hopefully there's more of that.
Yeah. Right. So yeah, I think I know we've gone a little off topic there,
Yeah.
but bringing it back to the cars, let me just take a look here. I think that was most of what I wanted to cover with sort of protecting games. Sorry.
Okay, so yeah, what about protecting your terrain? Because that one, I feel like some of it can be very easy to break. How do you feel about it?
Um, I don't think it's possible
What?
to protect the terrain because I think
Well, no, you can't protect it physically. So how? What do you do about it? Like, do you feel overprotective of it?
no, I think um like when I build terrain, I don't build it intending for it to get damaged, but I know it will get damaged over time. But to me, that just means I'm using it,
Mm-hmm.
and I guess I'm okay with that. um, like to me, it's more so the terrain that's not used that I'm not concerned about, but like I feel I don't know sad about. I'm not sure what the right word is. But yeah, if the terrain gets damaged, like I don't have any negative feelings about it. Overall, it's just it's getting used. And that's what I like.
Mm-hmm.
um, like I made a table for the hobby store several years ago when we first moved here. Um, and I know that table's still at the store. It's getting rough, but to me that means it's just been used. It's been used over and over and over again. So um, to a degree, that brings me joy just seeing the wear and tear on the terrain. But yeah,
I would really like to know what other people think about it and
yeah.
what their reasons are for protecting their games if they are, and whether they have also experienced, like we did, right? Like a shift of perspective of games back when we were younger versus nowadays. Like, is it maybe just our generation? Or is it actually, perception from being a kid to being the one that is paying for it? Or is it simply the evolution in the game industry that, and like the higher cost for the games as well?
I think just also thinking like again, it's not a knock against protecting your cards, right? Like if you want to protect the cards, just leave them. Um, but there are other things in the game that typically can't be protected and will
Mm-hmm.
wear over time, like the board itself. What's that mining game that we were just playing?
The what?
Sulcan?
Solke?
Sulcan? Yeah. Like the board on that it's made out of cardboard, it's made in pieces, and over time the board has just slightly warped.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's nothing you could do about that.
Yeah, I've
And
seen
there's
there was
kind of
another
yeah,
game. Yeah, there was another game that we were playing that needed to be flat, and it's just not flat
it's
anymore. I
just
can't
not flat
remember which
over
one.
time. Yeah,
Yeah.
it happens over time. It's not like they're the strongest components. It's cardboard,
Mm-hmm.
right? If there's moisture in the air or humidity, the boards are going to warp over time. And again, I think to me that just brings back that overall most board games are just going to depreciate in value over time because
Mm-hmm.
there's you can't protect everything in that game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, don't forget to let us know what you think about it. What is your experience? What is it that you think about it?
I hope you enjoyed the discussion and I guess our thoughts and opinions and experiences around protecting cards and games and collectible card games.
Yeah. Okay, so drop us a comment, like, subscribe, and we hope to see you here for our next episode.
All right. Bye.
Bye.